All right, do you want me to talk about USA Super-Patriot, Bob? What it means a little bit, or something else? I don't have time to think of something else. We'll do that first. Super-Patriot. Well, it's defined that way. You could call somebody else a super-patriot somewhere if they're a super-patriot of their country. But super-patriot in this context, it means super-patriot who understands the real history of America, contrary to all the lies that Democrats have told for the last 100 years or 150 years. They started really 150 years ago when they created the KKK after losing the Civil War to the Republicans. And they were mad that they lost their business of slavery, and they created a group called the KKK, right? That was Confederate soldiers who lost the Civil War in 1865. Right around that time is when they created that. All right? So, shortly after, they turned the drug cartel system into a slavery system. They started working on that a few years, 30 years after, right? And that's not the subject here. But, so, Christianity was the religion of the Republicans, generally. They supported one nation under God because it's the only religion in the world that is not racist. It's the only real religion in the world, actually. All the others are false religions based on dead gods, gods that have no proof of life, and all that. And they believed in the freedom. They came here for the freedom of speech to talk about religion and find real religion, not to find false religion. And so they weren't allowed to talk. Only the Pope was allowed to talk religion. In where they escaped from, in England, mainly in England, but in Europe, parts of Europe, they would be hung by the neck for reading the Bible, right? So they came here for freedom. They were actually Christian refugees, in a sense. We were founded by Christian refugees, which probably means we should not allow anybody to come to this country except for Christian refugees, because those Christian refugees came here for refuge from being hung by the neck for reading the Bible, right? And they created America. Not the slavery. They created the free America, the North Side, the Daniel Boone stories. Look up Daniel Boone on YouTube and get some real history. Man, so Kentucky was split north and south. The North, where the freedom lovers mostly were. I'm not going to say that everybody in the South was not that. They probably didn't want the cold weather, probably didn't travel that far, the poor people. But the governments basically came here. The governments that the Quakers, the settlers escaped from, they escaped there to come here for freedom, but those governments came here trying to stop them from being free. Those governments, the rich people, the governments, brought the slavery. They tried to stop those people from being free. They tried to take over. They had many wars to try to stop the settlers from being free. I'm not going to go through that and remember everything, but there was more than one war. The Revolutionary War, War of 1812, their Spanish and Indian Wars, other Indian wars. There was the Indians here made peace, though, with the Quakers, the settlers, who became the Republicans, known as the Republicans later. And the Republicans were already known as the Republicans before the Civil War, and they won the Civil War, and it was Christian Republican President Abraham Lincoln who won the Civil War and outlawed slavery. Okay, so knowing that history, here's the main part that gets where I came up with Super-Patriot Bob, right? USA Super-Patriot Bob. And it doesn't have to just be my name. Somebody can use that without just using my name. They can put their name there, right? If they agree with it. Super-Patriot is defined by the fact that we're the youngest country in the world. To summarize it, we're the youngest country in the world. The youngest superpower, we'll say. And the world leader at the same time. How did we become the world leader? How did we become the world's economic leader? And well, it was timing, part of it. We were fortunate to have the timing of the Republicans giving us the free market capital system, where Abraham Lincoln says everybody should get paid for their labor. So, and then they put "In God We Trust" on the dollar at that time. So we trusted God in a sense. It's hard. An employee, they got to pay their employees. The employer has to pay their employees And they're scared to do that because they're scared they're going to run out of money. How do you pay them? Well, you budget it, and you got to figure out if you can keep an employee or not. They do things like that. They have to do that. But in general, they still step out on faith and love their neighbor, because we're one nation under God, and God we trust. The Republican side created that, right? And so they take a chance and love their neighbor instead of hoarding money and being a dictator and budgeting money and keeping all the money for themselves. They put in God we trust on the money. I think that's probably why they did it. That's my conjecture, my inference, partly, but that's definitely part of it. But that's where we became the world's leader. So you had the Industrial Revolution in Britain first, and then the Second Industrial Revolution, the dates I forget exactly, 1860 through 1914 maybe. And so during that time, the slavery ended at 1865. Generally, it was outlawed anyway. Some people want to argue, well, everybody didn't stop right away. There were some rebels that wouldn't quit. But it was outlawed, all right? And it was mostly quit at that time, right? So they were having to pay people for labor. I know one story I do know is black workers, a lot of people, dock workers, a lot of them were black. They had a high population of black people that worked dock work, and they were feeding them cocaine to help them work longer hours. It was legal then. So they fed them that to help them work longer hours, and then it was the KKK that actually pushed to make that illegal. They're one of the biggest names I've heard that argued to make it illegal. Then they demonized addicts and said, let's hang them by the tongue from airplanes, as if that's the only sin in the world. But is an addiction actually a worse sin than murder? Is it a worse sin than stealing? It can certainly cause some people to maybe be sensually aroused too much or out of control. Maybe lose their temper, which is a risk of killing somebody. It's not. I think it's a trick. People have been deceived into thinking that drugs and alcohol causes people to steal. It doesn't cause people to steal. Being broke causes people to steal, or being pressured for money causes people to steal. And so the dealing groups, they steal from addicts if it's illegal substance, because they know they can't tell that they got robbed if they were using an illegal substance. So they get robbed, and they do that to try to turn them into thieves, to steal from the free market capital system. Who would teach that? The Democrats have taught that, because they say it's okay to steal from capitalists. They say that, right? But the truth is, they hate capitalism because it is what keeps slavery illegal. So it works. It's been blessed by God because we're loving our neighbors by paying them for their labor. It's something we do. That's a sacrifice. A lot of times, sometimes it's not, but a lot of times it is. It's a risk, but it's a kind risk. It's a thoughtful risk. It's an appropriate risk. And it's not always a huge risk. Sometimes it is, but in God we trust with the results. And the results are, we had the second economic boom. Let's see, the Industrial Revolutions. I might have got some dates mixed up. The economic boom. Okay, the second the big economic boom actually peaked out in the 1920s. All right, and that's where we had the results of the Industrial Revolution and an economic boom here that happened because we solidified the free market capital system after slavery. And I think God blessed that. He may have helped the timing of that go well, because we were here searching for the freedom of religion. And if you think about it, how did the Quakers come here for the freedom of religion? Freedom of speech, freedom of religion. Real religion, not false religion. There's only one real religion. There's no religion based on anything except Christ that's real, because Christ rose from the dead. So it's academic. He put the burden of proof on all other religions and all other gods to rise from the dead to prove that they're real, that they have any validity. So when Christ came, he canceled out all other religions, and that's, if you're allowed to talk about it, that's just a fact. The Bible always gets challenged because it has a lot of things, proof to challenge. And these other religions, they just say, you can't talk, you can't question our religion. And nobody knows anything about it. But if they were allowed to question it, they'd find there's no evidence of anything real in it. Nothing supernatural, extraterrestrial, nothing, no second life, nobody ever rose from the dead and never died again. So Christ proved all that. He proved love on the cross for people. So he's a loving God of human beings. He died as a human being to prove love for human beings. He died as a human being, forgiving human beings. He could have come off the cross and hurt those human beings. He proved that by rising from the dead. It's a proven faith. And so, religion, we got the freedom of religion, not the freedom of false religion. There's nothing in our documents to say you have the freedom of false religion. Nothing. And that's not the purpose. The freedom of religion, the purpose of freedom of speech and freedom to speak about religion was to find real religion. That's the purpose of it. So they were really wanting what's real. Okay, so that's why we're super country. I'll call it. I'm grateful for. I don't want to teach pride, but gratefulness for the most influential country, the leading economic country, the most powerful in that sense in the world, in history. And it just partly it happened with the fortunate thing that's unusual in the history of the world is the Industrial Revolution happening, along with finding the best system to put in place to complement all that and be a neighborly system. So it's the most neighborly system in the world, despite Democrats always trying to act like it's not. And they act like it's a greedy system when it's the least greedy system, actually. The least ever created. The least greedy system ever created by man. And so that's what it is, actually. And the Democrats try to make it look like the most greedy, while they are trying to put the most greedy system back in, which they had run in the first place, slavery. The Democrat Party was the Confederate Party. They are the party of slavery. And they define all of America as the party that they were when there was always two parties, two sides. It was mostly always Confederates and Republicans, right? And before they were even named Republican, they were still whatever they were, Quakers and different things. Yankees were Union soldiers, and I'd have to refresh my memory if they had any other official names. But you had the Confederates and the Unionists, or I don't know but that the Union was the Republican Party, right? So that's Super-Patriot Bob is recognizing the true history of America and, wants to move forward with the truth and recognize all the lies the Democrats do. I mean, the Democrat Party has no reason not to lie. They don't believe in God. Right? They hate God. They hate Jesus, which is the only proven God, right? They do everything they can to let Islam take over because Islam is not real. It has no real God, right? So, but they're trying to criminalize people who will say that instead of debating it. You're supposed to be able to debate that and say, okay, well, give me the proof of rising from the dead. Okay, now you can, academically speaking, now we can't turn it into a theocracy, or we're not supposed to turn the government into a theocracy, but it's not a theocracy to recognize the truth in academia. And so Jesus made it academic. You can't prove that it was a fairy tale. So the only evidence that Jesus is not God is if somebody could prove that it was a fairy tale. There's too much evidence, too many people involved. Jesus' mother, Jesus' stepfather, Jesus' disciples, the soldiers who guarded the grave, the people who saw him crucified, all those kind of things. The resurrection, the witness of doubting Thomas touching his scars after he rose from the dead, history prophesying it before it happened, and then it happened, all that stuff. There's more than that. There's Paul who came after Jesus, or that he lived during that time, but he had converted after knowing, I don't forget exactly when, but you can't disprove it. You can't prove that it's a fairy tale. So you can say you can't 100% prove that it is. You can't prove that it is a fairy tale, and you can't 100% prove it's not a fairy tale. All right, but you can almost 100% prove it's not a fairy tale, based on the creation story and 7 days, and we have 7 days now, and then the sun coming up is all a picture of Christ rising from the dead and give us redemption every day and forgiveness every morning, all that kind of stuff. It mirrors the redemption story. We all die, we're all born, we all have descendants, we have great-grandmothers, grandmothers, great-great-great-greats, and all that, and aunts and uncles, and the Bible has all those stories of that and shows that we all came from. They show the first one. They show the first grandmother and grandfather, Adam and Eve. They show the first ones since the time of the flood. There's scientific evidence and archaeological evidence of the flood that they hide all the time. And, you know, the one scientists that have gone to study it, they're finding it on Mount Everest. They're finding it all over the place. So, anyhow, thought I got distracted there by somebody. Or interrupted. But, so you have, I gotta close this out, but, it's time for me to close it out. I forgot what I'm saying. You know, I'll get off my caffeine. I'm always talking about coming off caffeine, like I've never have, but I have. I've come off it, I've just never stayed off it. All right, so, but I'm on one of those memory struggles. I guess I had Benadryl last night too, and I don't usually do Benadryl, but I had some allergic reaction to something, and it definitely, I've done Benadryl, it didn't hurt me that bad. I'm a little tired in the mind, but Benadryl, if I've done it 2 or 3 days in a row before, it starts slowing your memory down. It makes you tired is what it does. But just to summarize though, yeah, they lie about racism. Evolution is where racism comes from. It comes from, you know, people that don't believe in God. Atheism is racist because it doesn't put us as brothers and sisters from God, right? So it's one race, one human race from God, Adam and Eve. That's one race. If you don't believe in that, then you believe in some multiple race theory or something else, right? And then that's racism, to believe in more than one race. The Bible's the one that defines us as one race instead of multiple races. Multiple race theories, beliefs are racist. And so it doesn't mean that if somebody believes in multiple races that they hate another race, but it might mean they think one is more powerful, more superior, or something else, more advanced in the evolutionary cycle. That's where supremacy comes from. It doesn't come from the Bible that teaches humility. We're all one human race under God, and God's the only perfect one. So they've lied about, the Democrats have lied about all that stuff. All right. So anyhow, so that's where I get Super-Patriot Bob, USA Super-Patriot Bob, and we seek out the truth, ethical truth, the moral philosophy. Immoral liberty kills people. You're allowed to kill people for no reason, and with immoral liberty, right? Moral liberty is what we want, moral freedom. So we seek out moral freedom, and I'll just close it out on that. And I was hoping I could do a shorter version of that, but my mind's just tired, so I had to ramble to come up with points. But because I have a few other subjects I'm going to talk on, but they're separate from that. Anyhow, that's it. Super-Patriot Bob, USA Super-Patriot Bob, and I have the other nickname that supports it is Moral Liberty Lover Bob, Ethics-LoverBob, Ethical Truth Lover Bob. And I like to say Ethical Truth Lover Bob. That's one of my other new nicknames, is because just to point out that I'm not just a truth chaser, I'm a truth lover. Truth Lover Bob supports those titles. And so I've changed from Truth Chaser Bob to Truth Lover Bob because I don't want people to think I like to chase the truth just to get dirt on people, just to hurt them and talk bad about them. That's what Democrats do. Their father is Satan, all right? He loves to kill, steal, and destroy, and he's the father of lies. And so they're getting around, they're good at saying that Republicans lie and Christian believers lie and all this. And they lie as a sport. They lie all the time, the Democrats. And they support people who lie all day, every day. And like, for instance, I will say this, like that Epstein harmed, that we know of, 36 teenage women back in 2005. That's what they found. But the Democrats and all their voters, we just rescued the Republicans, ICE agents, just rescued, I forgot, 145,000 children that Democrats had smuggled across the border. That's way worse. Not way worse, but it's way more important to stop. It's just as important for each individual, but it's a way huger scheme than Epstein could ever dream of. All right? You hurt way more people, more children. You're stealing the whole livelihood of the entire human population at the levels the Democrats have harmed children coming across the border. And you can't say they're missing, that America's missing 1 million children. There could be more than 1 million children. We only found 145,000. There could be 1 million missing children that we can't list as missing from America because they're not from America. It could be 1 million missing children from other countries, multiple other countries combined, that they're not reported missing because they're smuggled into America by Democrats, by the Democratic scheme, the Democrat Party scheme. They're the ones that schemed it and had the cartels and everybody smuggle them over here. And Islamic people smuggle them over here. Terrorists and everybody else smuggle children over here. There's a lot of it. I don't know. I'm not going to say guarantee you there's 1 million children missing from other countries that we can't locate, but it's very possible. And so there's a lot more, though, than 145,000 that we found that are missing. And you think they haven't been abused? They got them dealing drugs, child labor. I guarantee that. I know I've seen kids out in the streets that I have never seen that kind of stuff much before. I've seen them in the recent years, though, in the ghettos and gang areas. All right, but I gotta go. I'm gonna end on that.